Hello and welcome to Galaxy Advisors. The purpose of this video is to explain how to use the Condor Twitter tool. It all begins with your interest. So, what is your interest that you would like to search Twitter for, and then collect those tweets so you can examine the network and the content. So everything begins with your area of interest. Do you have a set of words, a phrase? Do you have particular Twitter user IDs that you want to follow? Any specific geographical locations or specific dates? These are all parameters in which you can use with the Condor Twitter tool. So again, just to review the Condor basic processes, there are tools for data harvesting in which you collect your tweets in this case and save those into a database can have more than one data set. So you can repeat a similar search over multiple days and accumulate the tweets. You then will use the file command to open that database, and then finally you'll spend most of your time in the view command to visualize, measure, and analyze that Twitter network. So the fundamental things to start with is start Condor. Again, when Condor starts, if it's the first of the month, enter in the key, which is unique for each month. The host remains localhost, the user root. And the important thing is for password, this is your MySQL password. If you created one when you installed MySQL, you enter it here. If you did not, you just press the return and say OK. Recall the kind of three-step process. There's a series of 6 tools for data harvesting. We're going to focus on Twitter in this example. The next step is going to use the file to open that database where you save those tweets. And finally, you're going to use the view command to visualize, measure, and analyze the network, the trends, and actually even look at the content. So Condor runs on both a Mac and a PC. This is the Mac window, and here is Condor in the PC version. The functionality is identical, just a little screen display difference. So let's begin. Click on Tools. The first step is for the data harvesting, and then scroll down and click the Twitter collector. And once you do this, the Twitter form is going to open, and the next series of slides are going to be about how to set the parameters. There's actually 11 different parameters you can set in this Twitter form, and talk about what that will result in your final Twitter network. So this form actually can be divided into 5 sections. The 4 and 1 through 4 are the blue, are actually where the 11 parameters that you can set, and I'll go through each section one at a time. The 5th in the orange box represents a logging. So as Condor is processing the tweets and so on, it's going to give you a little log message. In the upper left corner, you're going to see in a little green bracket in the lower right are the little commands that you use to operate this form. So let's now take these 5 sections one at a time and explain the 11 different parameters. The first thing is click on the database, and let's assume that you are now new. You want to create a new database. So a little form, once you click new, this little create new database window is going to open. And for example, here I suggest you enter healthcare Twitter. And then once you do that, you click on OK. The important thing about the naming of a database, it can contain no spaces or special characters. So once you do that, in the Condor window, it's going to give you a little message that Condor is connected to this database. One important note, it does says website. However, Twitter does use an email format, but the database message does indicate website. Now, if you try to use the web format, you're going to get an error, and it's going to say database is not type email. Please open a database of type email or create one. So just a little note about it actually does use the email format. So let's go through these 5 sections now. In the Twitter fetcher, there are actually 4 options. The first one, 1.1, is actually the amount of time. Collect data every nth minute. So we have 120 minutes here, and that represents really 2 hours. 1.2 is you can check also collect the follower network. Now the important thing here is, some followers could have thousands or tens of thousands of followers. So if you have an idea, you have a lot of followers, it could take a little while to for this entire process to conclude. Section 1.3 is the maximum number of followers to fetch. So you can kind of set an upper limit, if you will, of how many to fetch. And finally, 1.4, you can say discard users with more followers. So you can say, well, I'm not going to take the ones that are way up there in the tens of thousands. And so it gives you an idea of limiting the scope of the tweets and their followers in Section 1. Section 2 here of the Twitter is the query, and there's really two query options here. You can enter in the topic you're interested in, and for example, for this example, I suggest we use telecare, space telehealth, space telemedicine, and these are three separate terms that it's going to create three separate data sets for. And then I'm suggesting you could also, in the section 2.2, you can actually enter a user ID. So for example, I'm going to enter at JRB Trip, which is John Ambrasi, which for the TRIP database, which is turning research into practice, and he's located in Bristol in the UK. So these are a couple of the query options here. The third option is that actually you can use the form to geocode or select dates. So for example, if you want to select the Twitters or collect or harvest the Twitters around a particular city within a given radius, we have a URL called www.gpsvisualizer.com/geocoder. If you go to that URL, you can enter in a city name such as London, click start, and then it's going to give you the geocode coordinates. Just copy those coordinates out, paste it into that geocode, put a comma, and then indicate a radius as miles or kilometers of how far of a radius around that geography point that you can collect. So Twitter gives you the ability to zero in and say, I only want the tweets around this particular city. You can do that. You can also restrict the dates here using the date options in 3.2. In Section 4, the Twitter results gives you kind of three options. The first one, results of the top, this really represents the upper limit of the number of search results. The default is 20. So when you put something in, so I'm going to give you only the top 20 Twitter results. The degree of separation is really the number of steps from a user who is tweeting. The default is 2. And only collect retweets as communication links. Now if you check that, that means that only tweets that have been retweeted at least once will be included in the sample, thus leading to a link in the communication view. Now if you uncheck this, that means it'll collect tweets that were not retweeted and give you a little bit more look at those users that tweeted something but weren't retweeted. So for this particular example, I'm going to set the results to 100 because I had three terms, the telecare, telehealth, telemedicine. I'm going to say degree of separation is 1. I only want those that are directly connected because I want to see how telehealth, telemedicine, and telecare are directly connected, and I'm going to uncheck only collect retweets. So I'll get, even if a tweet was tweeted once and not retweeted, I will see the results. So that's the results 3 options. The fifth one is just really a log window that displays the activity that the Twitter is doing while it's processing. So let's come back to our form. I've accepted all the default options for this first sentence. I added the query 3 terms. I put an at JRB trip for a user ID. I didn't put anything geocode. I left the dates the same. And I've searched for the results of top 100, degree of separation 1. So now I'm all set to go. Click start. Once it starts, you're going to see in the log starting collector, and then it's going to give you its results. So here it's telling you the number of, for each item, the number of nodes and edges that it's inserting into the database. And an important thing for each one of these, so we're going to have 4 separate data sets. So at the end, you can say Twitter stop fetching. Just click stop. You're going to see a form that's going to come up, a message window said aborting Twitter fetcher. Just click OK. And then you're going to see in the log window collector done. It took so many seconds, and so on, with a little message that you can reopen this database to collect more results. So at this point, we're just going to click close. So now we've used the Twitter collector step 1 for harvesting. Now we're going to use the file command to open that database. So click File, select Open Database, and a new window, Login Database, will appear. In the little green circle, it's a little drop-down box. Click the drop-down box, find your Twitter database, and click on it, such as in this case, Healthcare Twitter, and click OK. So then what is going to happen, a window is going to open. It's going to show you the available data sets. And again, each term that we used and the user ID creates a separate data set. And append it to that as a suffix. It will be an _depth_com. So that gives you an idea that it came from the Twitter fetcher for these 4 pieces. So now what you wanted to do is hold the Shift key down and click on each data set to select all the data sets. When you do that, below that it's going to show you the number of records for each of the data sets. So now we're going to use the View command to visualize and measure and help analyze this Twitter network. So again, it's a 2-step process. The first step is to click View Communication, create Communications View, and then you're going to come back and say View Communication, and you're going to either select static view of communication or the dynamic view of communications. In this case, since I'm just going to click the static view, you could select a dynamic if you've been doing this over time. Most likely you're going to have 2 or 3 days of tweets in here, so you could have selected dynamic, but for my example, I'm just going to select the static to see the entire Twitter network here. So then, again, there's 2 steps: View Communication, create Communications View. You're going to have a form come up, and I'm just going to select the defaults, view all data sets, and click OK. You're going to see a temporary message appear for each data set settings, creating a temporary file. And then we're going to come back into the second step is to click View Communication, static view of communications. Now 2 forms will pop up, one asking you about weighting, and we're just going to select the default plain weighting, click OK. Then it's going to ask us if we want to select the top nodes by betweenness. Now here in this example we only have 244 nodes, which is really not that many, and that's very easily visualized. It's when you get into the thousands or tens of thousands of nodes that you might want to select, the top 1,000, top 500, top 10, or so on. So that you can not just kind of look at a network blob. So it kind of gives you that ability right here in this form. But I'm just going to select OK here. Now at this point, you're going to see the static view of the network results. Now, when you're looking at, nothing's labeled, but just to give you a quick hint, the nodes that are kind of in the center of these data sets, those represent the terms, the search terms, while the other nodes are the Twitter users. Now the red nodes have 1 or more overlapping data sets, and the data sets are colored or color-coded. So we had 4 search terms, so that's why you see kind of 4 different data sets color-coded here. Now it's nice to see the names. So again, the center node was our search term. So I'm going to click to display the node name. You right-click on a node, select Show Labels, click Name, and then it will display the name. So I'm going to go around and do that and click on the 4 center nodes to display the 4 search terms. So here we come back with the graph again, and you can see JR Trip in the blue in the upper left, the green Telecare, in center kind of the middle right telehealth, and the lower right telemedicine. And you can see those represent, those are the terms and the tweets that are done by users that included those that text in there. Now, you could refine this. One of the things is that actually you can remove those terms and just see how the tweets are connected, because that node is really kind of artificial. It says, well, what are the tweets around it? We could remove those nodes, those 4 search terms, and just see how the network looks like. So let's demonstrate that. So when you come back, you say click View Communication, and this time, besides View All Selected Datasets, I'm going to check Refine Site. and click OK. Now when you do that, that gives you ability to actually rename or remove nodes. In this case, we're going to remove the 4 nodes. So a format's going to come up listing basically the user IDs, the names list on the left. I'm going to select one, so scroll, select. In this case, I've done it for JR Trip, Telecare, Telehealth, and Telemedicine. And then I'm going to come over here to the far right form and click Remove, and then click Finish. So that way I'm going to remove these nodes from the mapping. It's going to come back with a message that says, do you want to do this? I'm going to say yes. I could say yes and remember, so I could come back and don't have to select them again. But for my purposes, I'm just going to say yes. Then I'm going to click, the form will come back, it'll tell me how many nodes there, and it's going to say we've deleted these nodes, and click Finish. So next, here we have the network with all 4 search terms removed. Very different when you look at that. And of course, you can right click on this, see different information, and you can use the other Condor form tools to further analyze that. So in the top left, you have the measure, view, bipartite control commands. There's a number of measures you can investigate. Several different ways to view, color, draw, zoom in, zoom out. You can redo the graph in terms of bipartite view, and you have control, especially for example selecting data sets. Let's say I only want to see the tweets by JR Trip along with telemedicine. I only want to look at these. You can selectively just choose those data sets to redraw the map. So a lot of areas for investigation here. Also, another thing is, since we collected the tweets, actually, you could go back and say view term content process and process the content and further subset the map, view the terms, and actually look at tweets that only contain certain words or by certain dates. So a lot of flexibility here. So again, we come back at the static view, and you can use those specific additional measures, view, bipartite, and control to refine and analyze your tweets. So another aspect is you can use Navicat to explore the underlying data directly. And here I've clicked on healthcare as a screenshot of the Navicat database. You have the chars, tables, gives you an idea to see some of the data that's available, as well as if you click on data sets, again, you'll see that each data set is numbered along with what particular search term was used with it. So if we come back and you look at the Condor Twitter form, you have 11 options, a lot of control and flexibility to refine how do you want to click your tweets. So with that, we hope you enjoy your Twitter investigation along your area of interest.